The Lucifer Effect, How Good People Become Bad. Philip Zimbardo's Lucifer Effect is a psychology book that explores the causes of violence and cruelty. The author argues that even good people in certain circumstances may be capable of terrible acts. Why is it important to read The Lucifer Effect? The book is important for several reasons. First, it helps us understand how the situation can lead people to do things they would never do in other circumstances. Secondly, the book helps us identify the warning signs that someone may be becoming violent or cruel. Third, the book gives us insights into how we can prevent people from committing violent or cruel acts. What do you learn from the Lucifer Effect? The book teaches a number of important lessons, including: the situation can influence human behavior. In certain circumstances, even good people can be capable of terrible acts. The power of authority can corrupt. When people are invested with authority, they may be more likely to abuse power. The dehumanization of victims can lead to violence. When people are seen as less than human, it is easier to treat them cruelly. Full summary. The book The Lucifer Effect is divided into 3 parts. Part 1, O Experimento de Preseo de Stanford. A primera part, O Experimento de Preseo de Stanford, describe experimento realizado por Zimbardo en 1971. No experimento, os participantes foram divididos em 2 grupos, guardas e prisioneiros. Os guardas foram autorizados a usar qualquer método de disciplina que consideração necessário para manter a ordem. Os prisioneiros foram despejados de sua identidade e tratados como prisioneiros de verdade. O experimento foi interrompido após 6 dias, quando os guardas começaram a abusar dos prisioneiros de forma severa. Zimbardo concluiu que a situação havia levado os guardas a se comportar de forma cruel, mesmo que eles não fossem pessoas cruéis. Part 2, O Mundo Real. A segunda parte, O Mundo Real, explora exemplos de violência e crueldade no mundo real. Zimbardo discute casos como o Holocausto, o genocidio em Rwanda e a tortura de prisioneiros de guerra. Zimbardo argumenta que a situação pode levar as pessoas a fazer coisas que elas nunca fariam em outras circunstâncias. E ele também argumenta que o poder da autoridade pode corromper e que a desumanização das vítimas pode levar à violência. Part 3, Como evitar o efeito Lucifer. A terceira parte, Como evitar o efeito Lucifer, discute como podemos evitar que as pessoas cometam atos violentos ou cruéis. Zimbardo propôs uma série de medidas, incluindo evitar a desumanização das vítimas, reduzir a desigualdade de poder, promover a empátia e a compaixão, desenvolvimento dos tópicos. Part 1, O Experimento de Preseo de Stanford. O Experimento de Preseo de Stanford foi experimento de psicologia social realizado por Philip Zimbardo em 1971. O experimento foi projetado para estudar o comportamento humano em situações de confinamento. In the experiment, 24 healthy participants were recruited to participate in a 2-week study on prison life. Participants were divided into 2 groups, guards and prisoners. The guards were allowed to use any method of discipline they deemed necessary to maintain order. The prisoners were stripped of their identity and treated as real prisoners. The experiment was halted after 6 days, when the guards began to abuse the prisoners severely. Zimbardo concluded that the situation had led the guards to behave cruelly, even if they were not cruel people. Zimbardo identified a number of factors that contributed to the cruel behavior of the guards. These factors include the dehumanization of the victims. The guards were encouraged to view the prisoners as less than human. This made them more likely to treat them cruelly. The power of authority. The guards were vested with authority over the prisoners. This gave them a sense of power that may have corrupted their sense. The power of authority. The guards were vested with authority over the prisoners. This gave them a sense of power that may have corrupted their sense of morality. Peer pressure. The guards felt the pressure to conform to the expectations of the other guards. This led them to engage in cruel behavior, even if they did not agree with them. The Stanford Prison Experiment is a powerful example of how the situation can influence human behavior. Even good people, in certain circumstances, can be capable of terrible acts. Part 2, The Real World. The second part of the Lucifer Effect explores examples of violence and cruelty in the real world. Zimbardo discusses cases such as the Holocaust, the genocide in Rwanda, and the torture of prisoners of war. Zimbardo argues that the situation can lead people to do things they would never do in other circumstances. He also argues that the power of authority can corrupt and that the dehumanization of victims can lead to violence. Holocaust. The Holocaust was a genocide perpetrated by the Nazi regime during World War II. The Nazi regime murdered about 6 million Jews, as well as millions of other people, including gypsies, homosexuals, and the physically and mentally disabled. Zimbardo argues that the Holocaust is an example of how the situation can lead people to commit terrible acts. The Nazis created a situation where people were encouraged to dehumanize Jews and see them as less than human. This made it easier for them to commit acts of violence against the Jews. Genocide in Rwanda. The genocide in Rwanda was a genocide perpetrated by the Hutu against the Tutsi in 1994. The Hutus murdered about 800,000 Tutsi in a period of 3 months. Zimbardo argues that the genocide in Rwanda is another example of how the situation can lead people to commit terrible acts. The Hutus were encouraged to dehumanize the Tutsis and view them as insects. This made it easier for them to commit acts of violence against the Tutsis. Torture of prisoners of war. Torture of prisoners of war is an illegal practice that has been used for centuries. Torturers use a variety of methods to inflict pain and suffering on prisoners. Zimbardo argues that torture of prisoners of war is an example of how the power of authority can corrupt. Torturers are usually vested with authority over prisoners. This gives them a sense of power that can lead them to commit acts of cruelty. Part 3, How to Avoid the Lucifer Effect. The third part of the Lucifer Effect discusses how we can prevent people from committing violent or cruel acts. Zimbardo proposes a number of measures, including avoid dehumanizing victims. It is important to remember that all people are human beings, even those who commit crimes. When we see people as less than human, it is easier to treat them cruelly. Reduce power inequality. It's important to create situations where people have equal power. This can help prevent some people from using their power to abuse others. Promote empathy and compassion. It is important to teach people to empathize with others and to care about the well-being of others. This can help prevent people from committing violent or cruel acts. Concluding, The Lucifer Effect is an important and disturbing book. He shows us that even good people, in certain circumstances, can be capable of terrible acts. The book helps us understand how the situation can lead people to do things they would never do in other circumstances. It also helps us identify warning signs that someone may be becoming violent or cruel. The book also gives us insight into how we can prevent people from committing violent or cruel acts. Zimbardo proposes a series of measures, including avoiding the dehumanization of victims, reducing inequality of power, and promoting empathy and compassion. The Lucifer Effect is an important book that everyone should read. It helps us better understand the world around us and prevent tragedies from happening. I hope you enjoyed this summary of the Lucifer Effect. If you liked it, please leave your like and comment what you thought. Your support is important to me. If you think this summary might be useful for others, share it with your friends and family. Together, we can spread the message of the book. Thank you for reading.